Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next in our series of At the Core with Encore. Today, I'm joined by Jennifer Hall, partner at Lid Consultants with a specialization in network decision-making and warehouse implementations. And today, we're going to talk about everything related to tariffs within the supply chain world. So, Jennifer, welcome. Let's get to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me.
So part of the genesis of this fireside chat is to empower our clients who are seeking insights and solutions for supply chain and their commercial real estate. Can you provide a perspective on the key drivers that companies should consider when looking at their current supply chain processes, given today's geopolitical and economic climate, which seems to be changing literally on the hour? How important is sourcing and regional flexibility, as well as scenario planning and margin management? I know that's a lot, but I'm sure you have a lot to comment on that as well.
Yes, and absolutely, this is a topic that we are getting a lot of questions about, either from some of our existing clients or folks that are coming to us because this is starting to raise questions for them in their supply chains, and they're starting to realize that perhaps they don't know as much as they thought they did about their supply chain, or this is highlighting a level of vulnerability that they previously didn't, feel as much. I would say one of the drivers in what we are seeing take place is that lack of visibility. So with a lot of the tariffs that are happening right now, they are being placed on certain industries and then the countries of origins within those certain industries. And I feel like I am a broken record with this topic, but what this is highlighting for individuals is that lack of master data once again. The data is something that if you have the breakdown of, if you're a manufacturer, let's say you're a car parts manufacturer, having that breakdown of every single component that is going into your parts, bill of materials, they'll likely have that. But then taking that one step further and saying, okay, well, within that bill of materials, do they in fact understand the country of origin of every single one of those parts? Some of the folks that we are speaking to right now are suddenly realizing that they're not actually quite sure what kind of impact that they're going to have, because they're actually not quite sure exactly what the country of origin is for everything. And so when it comes to kind of what is one of the themes that's coming out of this, it's going back again to those basics on making sure that you have the information at your fingertips to make informed decisions when these types of situations happen. You talked a little bit about the scenario planning, and that's another theme that do companies have the tools to make these decisions, right? The people that are coming to Lid to ask questions about, hey, this has changed, and now I'm not sure what the impact is going to be. They don't quite have those tools within their ecosystem. There are some very strong what-if scenario planning tools out there that can help with these types of unknowns. And you can say, okay, well, what if this were to happen? What if that was to happen? And it at least has you understand, well, what's going to be the cost impact? I know at Lid, one of the ones that we work with is the Maestro from Kinaxis. Of course, there's plenty of other solutions out there, but as people are starting to take the step back and say, well, what do we do? Really arming yourself with the right tool is going to be quite valuable, whether that's, acquire a tool for yourself or going out and seeking help. It's making sure that you understand what is available to you.
And I like what you said too about the contingency planning, if then else scenario A, B, C. Yeah. It's something we at Encore Advisors from a pure real estate play take into consideration too. So, perhaps the actual rent rate or the lease rate for a warehouse may be X, but the access to labor and the cost of that labor may be Y and prohibitively more expensive, where it doesn't make sense to relocate or to expand, what have you. So that's interesting insight. Thank you for that. Okay, on to our second question. So in talks with Lid's founder, Charles Fallon, in early January, he felt there was a sentiment of malaise with the tariff situation, which contributed to a delayed start in supply chain investments at the beginning of 2025. And how do you see this investment pause playing out in the next few quarters? And, kind of building on that, what recommendations do you give to companies who feel stuck in moving their supply chain efforts forward despite this unprecedented uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the malaise continues in how people are feeling about this. Just the other week, having some conversations with a racking vendor. And that racking vendor was shipping in, a container worth of caseflow beds from the US to Canada, as they have done probably every few months for the last 30 years. And, to their surprise, they were slapped with a $40,000 tariff on that, which took full margin out of that project. So it is very reasonable that people are uncomfortable right now. And are starting to perhaps question, should I just take a minute to decide and let the dust settle a little bit? Frankly, in terms of the larger investment decisions, we'd already seen a bit of a slowdown on that last year. Some of the interest rates playing into that has shifted the market over towards some more kind of OpEx financing type models anyways, with non-fixed automation. And so looking at, ways that you're not going to have a multi-million-dollar upfront fixed cost and perhaps, have some kind of a monthly fee instead. And so this theme with the tariffs coming in, I think is just going to exacerbate that even further, where people are going to look for alternatives to a large sum upfront. And I think the other thing I would just comment on it is, I think it's very reasonable to want to take a pause. There's been a lot of change, and a lot of the discomfort that is taking place is in the unknown of, is it going to stay? Is it going to get worse, get better? And so just taking a minute, take the step back, and there's other things that companies could perhaps focus on, right, during this time. So if someone's feeling stuck, they had these plans for this large investment this year, they had the budget, everything was all planned out, and now they're going, okay, well, we're not ready to commit because we're not sure. That's fine. Take all of the take perhaps some of that effort that was going to go into the deployment of that large equipment, and focus on some of those other points that I was talking about, which is this level of clarity on data, right? You could deploy, summer interns are coming up, right? Figure out a way that you can deploy perhaps some summer interns to do some of that data gathering, and take this more as this opportunity to see, okay, well, what holes has the current scenario identified in your supply chains, and start to work through those while the dust settles. And then you could go back to perhaps, maybe it was regular scheduled programming on that investment. Maybe it's going to be something else.
And I know Lid's a big proponent too of doing your 10-point assessment and understanding what's your current state of your supply chain processes, and can we work to optimize those so that you are employing leading practices per your vertical or per the size of company you're operating against. And you're right, there's something to be said for that. So that's really sage advice. All right, our third question is, what do you see as the biggest challenge with the current tariff environment, and how can companies mitigate against this? What do you see as the biggest opportunity, and then how can companies harness this at this time?
What I see and what I hear from folk as being that biggest challenge is the uncertainty of what the end state outcome is going to be, but then also the timing of when that's going to take place. And is this going to be a prolonged sense of uncertainty for the next 4 years, or is this going to be an uncertainty for the next few months until we get something a little bit more structured? And that is what is making it difficult for people to say, or to perhaps make that decision to take a pause. If they knew, you know what, we're going to take a pause for 6 months and then we will get back to it, I think people would be like, all right, I can make that. But trying to take a pause and not knowing how long it's going to go for is having people be even more uncomfortable with what's going on. I think kind of the opportunity again that people can do during this time. You talked about some of the things that Lid's big proponents for, and one of those is having a roadmap, right? I talked earlier about tools and software that people can have to help them with what if scenario planning, and having a roadmap for your technology, for your entire supply chain plan along the way is very important. And one of the things that the scenario, right, that we're going through right now, it may have highlighted holes in that map. So first thing we're saying to folks, hey, well, one, make sure you've got a roadmap, right? Make sure that it is still valid considering everything that we know right now. Not that you necessarily have to react to the tariffs, may or may not, like to the tariffs happening or not, but the questions that this scenario is making people ask themselves is something that they need to take into that roadmap plan. Are there changes that they need to take? They need to make to the roadmap? They need to prioritize things differently to ensure that in the next, perhaps the next unknown that's going to come down, they're going to be better positioned to deal with that discomfort.
Yeah, taking the time, as you say, to reflect on their current state and be able to learn from that. And I'm sure there's something to be said too of just watching the market and just seeing and learning from competitors or from organizations like yourselves that can help clients in this time of uncertainty. So that's always good to know.
Yeah, and then when it's like, okay, well, what else can you do with again this time that's might be in limbo a little bit? And there is always a back to basics theme that can be done, which is, you know what, you're not going to potentially make this large investment decision. So, well, why not just really ensure that you are in tip-top shape with what you have right now? I was at a conference on Monday, and then the speaker asked, who has all of their processes mapped out? And there was really like 2-3 hands that were raised in the room. And so, okay, well, right there, it's like that is process mapping is not sexy. It's a bit of a drag, but it gives an overview of where opportunities are within your operations. All right, well, take the time now to do it, right? Like that's going to be a low investment type of exercise. I mentioned interns earlier. Interns are well suited for that as well. Like they're not going to get it all the way, but they can get it to you to a certain point. And so it's really just trying everyone's best to shore up what they've got if they're in a position of not wanting to pull the trigger on something more expensive at this time.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I always love to end these conversations about future pontification, as I call it. So fast forward 12 months, 24 months from now, and we're reflecting on this. What do you think is going to be the biggest learning from this unprecedented time period that we're going through right now as it relates to supply chain and how businesses operate and how they strategize for their business?
I think, well, what would be real nice if this is what it took to get everyone's master data exactly where it should be. Wouldn't that have been a nice outcome of this? But I think that again, just having this whole situation put people in this position to identify vulnerabilities they didn't know they had or that they didn't prioritize. I think there's going to be perhaps a little bit of the theme as well, especially kind of within the Canadian market, focusing a little bit more Canadian. We know in the US, it's going to be focusing a little bit more US as well. And so maybe there's going to be some more prolonged outcomes of those two sentiments. But I think it is always, it's always thoughtful or always a period of reflection for people to say that, oh, I was given this question and I didn't have the tools available to me to answer that question. And so we'll see, I guess, in the next 12 to 24 months, and hopefully by that time, we're not talking about the crazy tariffs.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Jennifer Hall. Really appreciate your insight as always, and look forward to our next conversation. Until then, be well and thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.